Welcome to this episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV. Reports have emerged of over 80 Tibetans detained following objections over a Chinese government-led gold mining project in Kashi village of Kham province in Tibet in early November, and the Chinese government's exploitation of Tibet with excessive illegal mining activities and dam constructions began almost immediately after their complete occupation of Tibet in 1959. As a result, Tibet today faces critical socio-cultural and ecological damages. To explore the implications of these rapid developments, we have Tempa Gyaltsen Zamlha, Deputy Director of Tibet Policy Institute, Central Tibetan Administration. Welcome to the program, Tempa.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Right. Tempa, can you speak on the arrest of over 80 Tibetans in the recent protest in Kashi village, as I've said in the introduction, in Kham Tibet against the gold mining in their pasture land? The latest report states that several of them are still in custody, communications have been cut off, and security has been further tightened around the entire locality.
That's right. Unfortunately, as Chinese government always does, that they have brutally repressed peaceful protests against mining in the region. And particularly this time on 5th of November, there was a gold mine about to happen in Kashi region, in Sershul Dzachuka, or that's in East Tibet. What happened was the local community in Kashi village of Sershul Dzachuka tried to appeal to the local authority that the gold mine in that particular region would pollute the rivers and destroy the mountains or secretary mountains, and also disturb the local way of life. But unfortunately, the local authority sided with the mining companies, and there was a bit of confrontation between local communities and between local community and the mining company and also local Chinese authority. And what followed was the next day, the Chinese local officials brought military personnel and police coming to each homes and arresting people from that particular village. As of now, 7 people are still missing, whose whereabouts are not known. So the situation is very bad, and that some of them faced kidney damage because of extreme assault on them by the Chinese government officials. So, and some of them also faced a broken rib, and some of them also faced relapse of tuberculosis because of long detained in the police custody, and also provided very little food during the period of detain. And also they have been forced to sign false confession, saying that they have been imprisoned because of wrongly assaulting Chinese officials, or that they will not share the incident to the outsiders, which means to the exiled community, and also to the higher authority, that is to the Chinese government. So this indicates that there is clear collusion between the mining company and the officials in that locality.
Right. So, Timla, so far what we know is that this gold mining project in that district is not the first one. Reports say that these activities have been going on since 1990s, right? So who benefits the most from these activities, and also what does the result of these activities look like today?
Look, mining across Tibet that China has pursued since its occupation of Tibet in the 1950s primarily or solely benefits Chinese government and Chinese business people, no one else. And if we are not able to calculate the amount of money Chinese government earns from resource extraction in Tibet, could be billions and billions. It would be 10 times or 100 times more than what the Chinese government claimed to put in for the development in Tibetan areas. And so the only benefit is the Chinese government and the Chinese business people. And yes, there has been, as per the report we received, there has been mining in the region before, and it seemed like there has been gold, copper, and also a few other minerals being extracted in those regions, but not on a large scale as that we know of. But now it seems like with the construction of a dam nearby the village, and also construction of highways and roadways in those regions, there's a clear indication that the Chinese government would accelerate and also expand mining in this particular region. And because gold, as we all know, the gold price is at its highest peak at the moment. And so Chinese government has been mining gold, lithium, and copper in those regions.
Right. So speaking of lithium, Timbala, China is currently one of the key players in the lithium ecosystem globally, and then China extracts lithium from Tibet, right? So with all these heavy mineral minings in Tibet, of course, there are irreversible ecological damages, but there are equally amount of damages on the socio-cultural sphere. Can you elaborate on some of those disruptions that require urgent concern or urgent attention?
Yes. I think I'll answer your question in two parts. First, the lithium extraction in Tibet and how it benefits the Chinese government. If you look at the current lithium production trend, as per the Chinese news outlet, now they are emerging as the second largest producer of lithium, or the second largest reserve of lithium. That's primarily because of the 4 million tons that they have discovered, and also another 1 million tons they have discovered in Dzachuka. 14 million tons they have discovered on the northern Salt Lake regions of Tibet. So which has made China the second largest reserve of lithium. And lithium is the primary mineral that is required for electric vehicle, lithium battery, and solar panels. Now, what is so strange is that at the moment China is the largest producer of electric vehicles, largest producer of solar panels, largest producer of lithium batteries. So all three components that China produces and earns billions from international market is supported by lithium minerals coming from Tibet. And unfortunately, no Tibetans get benefited. Instead, there is extensive ecological destruction. In the case of lithium mining in Dzachuka, a few years ago, there has been mass death of fishes because lithium extraction is a very complicated process. So the Chinese mining companies are the kind of companies that are known to disregard environmental policies, local norms, and also that they follow minimum rules and regulations being put up by the community or the local government. So mining extraction has caused destruction of sacred mountains in Tibet, displacement of Tibetan nomads, contamination of rivers and lakes. So the ecological implication from Chinese mining, particularly lithium and copper, has been enormous. In the name of green energy, China is benefiting from Tibetan minerals, but putting Tibet at enormous risk, and which is what all colonial powers always do for the progress of the nation that they call at the cost of destroying or destruction of colonized territories.
Timbala, as you've discussed in your answers, that lithium is majorly used to make batteries or solar panels and then electric vehicles. China claims that their extraction of lithium from Tibet is for their BEV or the battery electric vehicle project and to attain carbon neutrality. But how effective is this project, and does this justify the harm that Tibet bears?
Is it justifiable? Absolutely not, because for the very goal behind Chinese green energy transition is to reduce air pollution in China. And China was and still one of the most polluted countries on earth. And it has faced severe smog issues, particularly in the major cities like Beijing and Shanghai. So to counter that, China has moved to green energy. Yeah. But what they have done is, for the well-being of the Chinese population and for the economic development of China, they have destroyed Tibet's ecology, they have displaced Tibetan people. So it is a colonial way of rule that they want to have a green transition, they want to have economic transition, but that coming at the cost of displacing, as I said, displacing Tibetan people from their homes, ancestral land, and also from their monasteries, as per the example that of the Kamtuk dam, where they forced 13 villages and two monasteries from their traditional location to accommodate dam in that particular region. And in the same case, they have displaced large number of Tibetan nomads from their homes to accommodate mining in those regions.
So as you said, China with the Chinese government with their expansionist policy, it only benefits their own country and not Tibet. So with all these mining, extensive mining and dam projects in Tibet, as you've mentioned, what are the legal, ethical and some integrity boundaries that China continues to cross, and how does this become a global concern?
This is a serious global concern because Tibet is the highest plateau on earth, standing at an average elevation of more than 4,000 meters above sea level. Which basically influences climate conditions across Asia, Europe, and North America. So if anything happens on the plateau, definitely affects regions around it or the regions adjacent to the plateau. So there are scientific papers which has clearly linked that the landscape change on the plateau will have severe influence or repercussion to the regions, particularly India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Thailand, other regions. Now, what are the political and legal and moral implications? Now, China does not follow any moral or ethical rules that is known across the globe. The Chinese way of destroying ecology through mining is known also in Africa and in South America, because Chinese mining happens in Africa and also in South America, where they have caused enormous ecological destruction. Similarly, in Tibet, because it's a occupied region, it's a colonized region, Chinese government has this enormous freedom or the authority to extract or exploit however they like. So they are in a way overriding their own environmental rules, policies and regulations. As per the environmental rules and regulations, the Chinese government kind of strengthened in recent years under President Xi Jinping, seem like it's followed primarily to the Chinese region and not to the areas they have colonized, such as Tibet, Southern Mongolia and East Turkestan. So Chinese government does not follow any international rules or norms when it comes to mining in Tibet, and also they do not implement the what do you call that, nicely coded Chinese new environmental rules and regulations in places like Tibet.
Right. So Zamlha, another report came out last month in November that of the Hongchi Bridge in Amdongapa that has collapsed. The construction of the bridge finished in January, and it has been opened to traffic just a few months ago. Reports on this incident also say that the region is prone to a lot of natural calamities like earthquakes and then the melting of permafrost. What implication does this have on all mega infrastructure that China continues to develop in Tibet?
Now, the collapse of the Hongchi Bridge clearly indicates something, and China is very good at building dams, building roads. There's no doubt about that. They have had experience of the last 50 or more years, because the very first way or means of occupied Tibet was building roads. So they have very good experience, expertise on building roads and railway lines and bridges. Now, despite this huge improvement or advancement in the technology or the expertise in building railway bridges and highways, the collapse, which came just a month after its opening ceremony, clearly indicates something very alarming, and that is no matter how advanced the Chinese engineers are in building mega projects, there is always risk of collapse. First, I think there was a lot of bombardment, or to build or create the pillars that support the bridge. I think there have been enormous disturbance to the mountain bed, rock bed, and other issue was possibly the gradual filling up of a nearby dam. And if you look at the earlier pictures of the construction of the dam, the river volume that you see was very, very low. But after the completion of the bridge, you could see the river volume has significantly increased. So that is what that shows is that a dam that has been built nearby started to fill in, and that volume has increased. So there are two. It is like a double sword. One, there was a disturbance of the mountain bed because of the construction of those pillars, and followed by gradual filling up of the river in those regions. So that, which in a way instabilized the very foundation of that mountain, and that led to gradual crack on the mountains, and then landslide, which eventually leading to the collapse of that bridge. So it is clear indication that in the future, any of those mega dams or the bridge or the railway line that the Chinese government has built could face severe natural implications, because Tibet, as you stated, is one of the most seismic prone zones on earth, because it is located on many of the fault lines. And if such a happens, if there's an earthquake, or if there's a landslide, something that kind of cause a collapse of one dam, that could lead to collapse of all other dams. So there was a case example back in 1975 in China. One of the dams collapsed due to heavy rain in China, and collapse of that dam led to collapse another dam, and that led to death of more than 100,000 people and displacement of millions. And the Chinese said this has never happened in the history, and they said the dams were built to withstand heavy rainfall for 100 years, but the rains, the volume or the pace of the rainfall was something that has never happened in 2,000 years. So Chinese government always gets an excuse. Chinese government does not understand Tibet people's wish, Tibet people or Tibet way of life, or respect Tibet people's need. And also Chinese government is the goal. Chinese government, the only goal the Chinese government has on occupation of Tibet is to extract Tibetan mineral resources, because the very bridge that was built is to accelerate export or the transportation of Tibetan minerals, and also the transportation of Chinese migrate into Tibetan regions. And also gold mining is to benefit Chinese companies and the Chinese government. So there is a clear picture that Chinese government does not care about Tibetan people or the Tibetan land, and also the needs or the wishes of Tibetan people in Tibet.
Right. So thank you so much, Zamlha, for speaking to Tibet TV.
Thank you very much, Zamlha.
That is all for this week's episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV. I will see you in the next one.